What if everything you've been told about being an empath is backwards? For decades, the traditional psychiatric community and mainstream psychological discourse have relentlessly pathologized your deep, intrinsic sensitivity, hastily labeling your profound, multifaceted internal experiences as mere clinical anxiety, chronic overthinking, or severe emotional dysregulation, completely missing the extraordinary underlying reality of your unique psychological design. You have likely spent the vast majority of your entire life feeling deeply exhausted, perpetually overwhelmed, and unfairly burdened by a chaotic, relentless influx of dense emotions, confusing thoughts, and heavy energetic frequencies that do not even belong to your own personal experience, carrying a heavy diagnostic label while secretly, desperately wondering why you feel so fundamentally, painfully different from everyone else around you. But what if this devastating chronic exhaustion is not actually a symptom of a broken, fragile mind, but rather the catastrophic, unintentional mismanagement of a highly sophisticated, biologically and spiritually advanced neurological superpower? Carl Jung, the legendary and visionary Swiss psychiatrist, was one of the very few historical pioneers who did not instantly dismiss these supernatural, highly attuned, intuitive capacities. Instead, he documented them extensively, treating the deeply sensitive individual not as a defective patient waiting to be cured of their depth, but as a complex person possessing advanced sensory equipment capable of tapping directly and profoundly into the vast, unseen reservoirs of the collective unconscious. Jung deeply understood that what modern, hyper-rational society dismissively calls an empath is actually an individual born with a radically heightened, almost supernatural capacity to accurately perceive the invisible, swirling psychological undercurrents and hidden emotional architectures of everyday human existence. When you walk into a seemingly normal room and instantly, inexplicably feel a heavy, suffocating atmosphere, or when you look closely at a smiling, outwardly successful person and inexplicably sense a deep, agonizing, suffocating depression lingering just beneath their cheerful, socially acceptable micro-expressions. Your highly tuned nervous system is not malfunctioning or projecting. It is, in fact, performing an absolute verifiable miracle of unconscious pattern recognition. Yet, precisely because you were never formally given the proper, protective instruction manual for operating this incredibly sophisticated internal machinery, you have been catastrophically absorbing the immense, unspoken suffering of the entire world instead of merely perceiving it from a safe distance, unknowingly transforming your greatest, most extraordinary potential strength into a devastating, paralyzing psychological wound. This fundamental misunderstanding of your own nature brings us directly to the first of your extraordinary, innate capacities, emotional field perception. As a deeply attuned empath, you do not just passively observe the surface-level emotions of others. You literally step into the invisible, radiating emotional field of another human being, reading their hidden baseline state with a visceral accuracy that completely defies conventional, logical explanation. However, unresolved childhood trauma, early emotional neglect, and chaotic family dynamics often severely twisted this beautiful ability, teaching you at a very young age that in order to simply survive and maintain a baseline of safety, you had to actively absorb the turbulent, unpredictable emotions of your distressed caregivers to artificially stabilize your chaotic environment. You unconsciously learned to completely fuse your own delicate energy with theirs, literally taking their unspoken rage, their simmering anxiety, and their heavy depression into your own physical body, processing it for them just to temporarily keep the peace and ensure your own survival. This deeply ingrained trauma response is exactly why you feel so intensely, physically drained, completely exhausted, and hollowed out after interacting with certain demanding or unconscious people. Your biological system is literally doing the heavy lifting of processing their massive piles of unprocessed psychological garbage. The radical, life-altering shift, according to the depths of Jungian psychology, is to finally move from a state of unconscious, boundaryless absorption to a state of conscious, grounded observation. You must urgently learn how to acutely perceive the surrounding emotional field without actually becoming the emotional field yourself. When you inevitably feel that sudden, sharp spike of foreign anxiety or dread when standing around a toxic coworker or a demanding relative, the correct, empowered application of this spiritual ability is to silently, internally acknowledge the feeling, accurately label it as strictly belonging to them, and immediately establish a firm, impenetrable energetic boundary, consciously recognizing that your designated role in this universe is not to endlessly metabolize their unhealed pain, but simply to gracefully and intelligently navigate around it. This vital, protective realization naturally and seamlessly leads us right into the crucial exploration of your second profound, highly advanced ability, unconscious pattern recognition. True empaths possess a truly supernatural, almost prophetic ability to instantly detect the hidden, selfish motives, the dark intentions, and the deeply buried, unresolved traumas that are secretly driving a person's outward human behavior, often perceiving these truths long before the other person is even remotely aware of them themselves. You naturally notice the incredibly slight, almost imperceptible hesitation in a deceptive voice, the fleeting, microscopic micro-expressions of hidden contempt or jealousy, and the subtle, unconscious shifts in body posture that entirely contradict the sweet, reassuring words being spoken aloud. The tragic problem, however, is that far too many well-meaning empaths completely and systematically ignore this profound inner knowing, constantly gaslighting themselves into falsely believing that they are just being overly critical, unfairly judgmental, or completely paranoid. You have undoubtedly, likely on multiple painful occasions, found yourself feeling deeply, catastrophically betrayed by someone after your screaming intuition aggressively warned you to turn around and walk away on the very first day you ever met them. You intentionally ignored the glaring red flags because you tragically projected your own inherent goodness, honesty, and pure intentions onto a person who was fundamentally, secretly operating from a dark place of hidden malice, manipulation, or deep psychological dysfunction. Carl Jung heavily emphasized the absolute, non-negotiable necessity of implicitly trusting this rapid, unconscious pattern recognition above all other logical data. When your incredibly sensitive nervous system aggressively alerts you to a glaring, dangerous discrepancy between someone's carefully crafted social mask and their true, vibrating baseline state, you are absolutely not being unnecessarily judgmental. You are, in reality, gathering critical, life-saving survival data. The correct, masterful use of this specific ability harnesses your extraordinary, lightning-fast intuition to fiercely protect your valuable energy, allowing you to gracefully, quietly exit toxic, dead-end dynamics long before they can catastrophically damage your peace, your finances, or your life. Instead of dangerously ignoring your powerful instincts just to be socially polite or agreeable, you must deeply honor your internal alarm system, permanently transforming your previous habit of passive, victimized observation into a state of active, highly boundaried, and deeply empowered discernment. This profound, life-saving level of acute perception is intrinsically, intimately linked to the correct utilization of your third highly advanced spiritual ability, shadow detection. In classical Jungian terms, the human shadow consists of all the deeply repressed, dark, socially unacceptable, and entirely unacknowledged parts of the human psyche that a person violently refuses to look at. As a highly attuned empath, your delicate sensory system is uniquely, almost perfectly calibrated to instantly detect the lingering presence of the shadow in others, no matter how well they attempt to hide it. You can viscerally feel the hot, suppressed rage masquerading cleverly as polite passive aggression, the deep-seated, agonizing insecurity hiding desperately behind a loud wall of arrogant narcissism, and the frantic, desperate need for absolute control cleverly disguised as selfless, martyrdom-like helpfulness. Because your deep empathy allows you to look past the monster and actually see the crying, wounded child cowering beneath the terrible behavior, your default, trauma-informed empathic instinct is almost always to jump in and rescue them, to pour your own life force into them, and to love them so hard and so relentlessly until their dark shadow is finally healed. This is a devastating, entirely lethal psychological trap. It consistently leads you completely blind into severely abusive, emotionally parasitic, and deeply one-sided relationships where you willingly sacrifice your own physical and mental well-being, attempting to fix someone who has absolutely zero genuine intention of ever facing their own terrifying darkness. You simply cannot ever heal someone else's shadow by willingly absorbing their toxic fallout. You only ever end up slowly poisoning yourself, inevitably becoming intensely anxious, deeply depressed, and ultimately filled with a dark, bitter resentment of your own. The correct, highly evolved application of your shadow detection ability is the practice of cold, compassionate discernment. You must consciously use this extraordinary piercing ability to see people clearly, exactly for who and what they are in this exact present moment, and absolutely not for their imagined future potential or the tragic, wounded child hiding deep within their past. When your finely tuned system detects a massive, dangerous shadow looming in someone's psyche, your assigned job in this universe is not to instantly become their unpaid suffering therapist. Your job is to rapidly and decisively adjust your personal boundaries accordingly, maintaining a very safe, impenetrable distance from their chaotic, destructive orbit. Before we continue, check out our new guide, True Self-Discovery, with 24 practical reflection exercises inspired by the teachings of Carl Jung, designed to help you find your way within. Click below to get true self-discovery. Returning to the thorough examination of your vast, incredible arsenal of intuitive tools, we now logically arrive at the fourth distinct, highly complex capacity, trajectory perception. Because you constantly, naturally absorb so much incredible data regarding shifting emotional fields, subtle unconscious patterns, and hidden dark shadows, your highly active mind naturally, automatically synthesizes all of this complex information to accurately predict the most likely future outcome of a person's poor life choices or the ultimate tragic destination of a failing relationship. You can very often vividly see the tragic, fiery end of a toxic dynamic months or even many years before it actually physically happens in reality. Yet, despite this incredible foresight, untrained empaths frequently, tragically misuse this amazing ability by repeatedly falling into the devastating trap of using hope as a form of prolonged self-abandonment. You clearly, undeniably see the disastrous downward trajectory of a romantic partner's severe addiction, a family member's financial ruin, or a close friend's reckless, self-destructive behavior, but instead of bravely acting on this clear foresight and immediately removing yourself from the inevitable incoming blast radius, you stubbornly stay, foolishly hoping that your boundless love, endless patience, and ultimate sacrifice will somehow miraculously alter the fixed course of their chosen destiny. This is a profound, unforgivable betrayal of your own deep, inner wisdom. Jung wisely taught that we must always bravely confront stark reality exactly as it is, and absolutely not as we desperately, childishly wish it to be. Trajectory perception is fundamentally a highly sophisticated, predictive early warning system specifically designed by nature to keep you completely safe from preventable harm. The only correct, empowering way to use this incredible spiritual ability is to act quickly and decisively on your accurate foresight. If you clearly foresee a dark path inevitably leading straight to emotional ruin, psychological manipulation, or severe energetic starvation, you must absolutely trust that internal vision and immediately alter your own personal trajectory to entirely avoid the devastating collision. You must finally stop endlessly waiting for invisible potential to magically actualize, and you must start making hard, firm choices based strictly on the undeniable, objective reality of the present trajectory, thereby successfully transforming a passive, terrifying sense of impending doom into a state of highly proactive, fiercely empowered self-protection. This incredibly proactive, boundaried stance is absolutely essential when finally learning how to properly manage your fifth profound, highly volatile ability, energetic resonance. Energetic resonance is the well-documented, highly observable phenomenon where your own internal biological frequency automatically attempts to align with the dominant frequencies of the surrounding environments, the prevailing ideas, and the specific individuals you consistently choose to surround yourself with on a daily basis. In a fully unconscious, completely untrained state, empaths constantly experience a terrifying phenomenon known as boundaryless merging. You innocently walk into a highly chaotic, disorganized workplace, and you instantly, involuntarily become deeply chaotic yourself. You speak on the phone to a bitterly angry, complaining relative, and you suddenly, inexplicably find yourself entirely consumed by a dark, unexplainable rage. You passively scroll through a feed of negative, terrifying world news, and you immediately plunge into a deep, paralyzing, chemical depression. Your own internal baseline state is entirely, helplessly dictated by loud, external forces, leaving you feeling exactly like a tiny, helpless, fragile leaf being violently blown about in a massive, never-ending emotional hurricane. This total, devastating lack of basic energetic sovereignty is exactly why so many naturally gifted empaths sadly live their entire lives in a permanent state of chronic, debilitating fatigue, their fragile nervous systems completely, permanently fried from constantly, endlessly processing the entire world's incredibly dense, heavy, and toxic vibrations. The correct, highly conscious, and masterful use of your energetic resonance is a radical, powerful act of sheer internal will. Instead of automatically, passively matching the lower chaotic frequency of your immediate environment, you must actively, fiercely learn to intentionally generate and solidly anchor your own peaceful, high-vibrating baseline state. You must consciously decide to become the powerful thermostat that sets the temperature of the room, and absolutely refuse to remain the fragile thermometer that merely reacts to it. When inevitably confronted with intense external negativity, hostility, or deep chaos, the fully conscious empath deliberately harnesses their immense internal power to intentionally, stubbornly resonate at a steady frequency of absolute calm, grounded neutrality, flatly refusing to drop their own energy down into the muddy, chaotic vibration of the other struggling person. By consciously, deliberately choosing your own energetic resonance in every single moment, you effectively create an invisible, impenetrable, but absolutely real energetic shield entirely around your delicate psyche, beautifully allowing you to freely interact with the entire messy world without ever actually being consumed, drained, or destroyed by it. You finally learn how to intentionally resonate only with that which deeply nourishes, truly uplifts, and perfectly aligns with your absolute highest good, while actively, effortlessly repelling all toxic, unwanted intrusions. This ultimate, beautiful mastery of internal resonance perfectly, seamlessly sets the final stage for the proper integration of the sixth and perhaps most profoundly complex of all your spiritual abilities, dimensional perception. Dimensional perception is the truly extraordinary, incredibly rare capacity to fully understand and simultaneously hold the multifaceted, deeply complex, and densely layered nature of human reality and spiritual existence. When you look at a situation, You do not just see the shallow, superficial, surface-level conflict playing out in a petty argument or a tense conversation. You instantly, clearly see the deep historical traumas, the lingering generational wounds, the terrified, unspoken childhood fears, and the massive, gaping spiritual voids that are all violently colliding together in that one single explosive moment in time. You naturally, effortlessly perceive the vast, incredibly complex, interlocking dimensions of the entire human experience all at the exact same time. However, in the untrained, eager hands of a deeply unhealed, anxious empath, this incredibly vast, godlike perspective almost always, unfortunately, results in the highly destructive habit of intrusive fixing. Because you can so clearly see all the intricate, hidden layers of someone else's deep problem, you naturally feel an overwhelming, almost biological compulsion to aggressively explain it all to them, to quickly solve it for them, to forcefully, urgently guide them toward a massive psychological healing breakthrough that they fundamentally never even asked for and are absolutely not ready to receive. This misguided, overeager approach not only completely exhausts and depletes your own precious energy reserves, but it also very often deeply alienates and angers the very fragile people you are so desperately trying to help, as they inevitably feel highly exposed, harshly judged, or completely overwhelmed by your intense, piercing psychological insight. Carl Jung deeply, profoundly understood that true, lasting psychological transformation can absolutely never be forced, pushed, or coerced upon another human psyche from the outside. It must always, invariably be slowly, painfully discovered and earned from deep within their own self. The only correct, highly advanced use of your dimensional perception is the quiet, disciplined cultivation of silent wisdom. You must actively learn how to gently hold this vast, multidimensional, profound understanding deeply within your own mind without ever feeling the desperate, anxious need to immediately act on it, to voice it, or to fix it, unless you are explicitly, clearly, and directly invited to do so by the other person. You can beautifully, powerfully hold a safe, energetic space for someone's immense suffering, completely understanding the deep, hidden historical roots of their agonizing pain, while simultaneously fully respecting their absolute sovereign divine right to walk their own difficult path, to make their own painful mistakes, and to learn their own necessary lessons at their own incredibly slow, frustrating pace. This beautiful, disciplined, silent wisdom permanently transforms you from an exhausted, frantic, intrusive rescuer into a deeply grounded, incredibly powerful, and highly respected presence, a shining beacon of quiet, unshakable strength who naturally leads and heals by powerful example rather than by forceful, exhausting intervention. When we finally, masterfully synthesize all 6 of these extraordinary life-changing abilities, your precise emotional field perception, your lightning-fast unconscious pattern recognition, your piercing shadow detection, your highly predictive trajectory perception, your fiercely guarded energetic resonance, and your vast, profound dimensional perception, we directly witness the glorious, unstoppable birth of a completely new, highly evolved psychological archetype, the conscious empath. The conscious empath has fundamentally, permanently dismantled the toxic, deeply false societal belief that their incredible sensitivity is a tragic curse, a biological flaw, or a cruel, divine mandate to endlessly suffer for the sins and pains of the entire world. They deeply, fundamentally understand down to their very core that their amazing abilities exist strictly for their own absolute protection, for forging deep, authentic connection, and for exercising profound, life-saving discernment, and absolutely not for the endless, draining rescue and toxic absorption of other people's chaotic, unhealed energy. They have finally, completely stopped apologizing for their sharp intuition. They absolutely no longer gaslight their own brilliant minds, when their highly accurate shadow detection violently alerts them to a hidden, looming danger. They fiercely refuse to ever again sacrifice their peaceful, carefully cultivated baseline state merely to temporarily pacify the loud, chaotic, demanding emotional fields of deeply unconscious others. Instead, the fully actualized conscious empath stands entirely, unapologetically within their own massive, radiant power, expertly navigating the dense, tricky complexities of all human relationships with the highly sophisticated, surgical precision of a master psychologist combined flawlessly with the deep, grounded, ancient wisdom of a truly enlightened spiritual sage. They absolutely recognize that by fiercely, ruthlessly protecting their own precious energy and strictly enforcing their ironclad boundaries, they are not being cruel, cold, or selfish in the slightest. They are, in actual fact, vitally preserving their own essential capacity to eventually bring true, radiant light, deep, authentic compassion, and genuine, lasting healing into a dark, confused world that so desperately, urgently needs exactly what they have to offer. Your personal, incredible journey from being a totally overwhelmed, perpetually suffering, boundaryless, energetic sponge to becoming a fiercely boundaried, highly conscious, unstoppable psychological powerhouse is absolutely the most radical, important, and necessary spiritual transformation you will ever have the privilege to undergo in this lifetime. It strictly requires you to bravely, honestly confront your own hidden shadow, that deeply wounded, insecure part of you that secretly uses chronic people-pleasing, constant over-functioning, and desperate rescuing as a manipulative way to finally feel worthy of receiving love and basic human validation. It fiercely demands that you immediately stop playing incredibly small to make others comfortable, and that you finally start fully honoring the absolute, undeniable scientific reality of your supernatural, highly attuned perception. Every single time you bravely set a firm, unpopular boundary, every single time you deeply trust your own visceral gut feeling over someone else's sweet, manipulative, deceptive words, and every single time you actively choose your own quiet, boring peace over someone else's loud, addictive, dramatic chaos, you are actively, literally, rewiring your own physical nervous system and permanently reclaiming the extraordinary, divine psychological gifts you were originally born with before the world told you to hide them. You are absolutely no longer a tragic, helpless victim of your own deep empathy. You are the undisputed, sovereign, brilliant master of it. You must permanently let go of the heavy, toxic, religious guilt that constantly lies to you, falsely telling you that you are somehow personally responsible for saving every single person who crosses your path. You must completely, finally release the crushing, suffocating, agonizing burden of the entire world's collective pain that you were simply never, ever biologically or spiritually meant to carry on your own two fragile shoulders. Step fully, boldly, and unapologetically into the profound, crystal-clear clarity and the deep, unshakable, mountainous strength that naturally, inevitably comes from finally using your incredible spiritual abilities correctly, safely, and powerfully, exactly as your brilliant, beautifully complex, and highly advanced mind was originally designed by the universe to do. Before we continue, check out our new guide, True Self-Discovery, with 24 practical reflection exercises inspired by the teachings of Carl Jung, designed to help you find your way within. Click below to get True Self-Discovery.